I was just a homeless girl playing piano at an abandoned train station when he appeared from the shadows, the city's most feared mafia boss with a proposition I couldn't refuse. But as I was drawn deeper into his dangerous world, I had to ask myself, how far would I go for the man who saved me, when loving him might cost me everything? The train station was quiet as I walked in. My steps echoed off the walls. No one else was there. Just me and the old piano in the corner. I liked it that way. In the empty space, I could play without anyone telling me to leave. I put my backpack down and sat on the worn bench. Inside my bag was everything I owned: 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, a toothbrush, and a photo of my mom. 3 months of sleeping on park benches and in shelters had taught me to pack light. My fingers touched the keys gently. They were smooth and cool. This piano was my only friend now. During the day, I cleaned rooms at the Valley Hotel for barely enough money to eat. At night, I came here to play the songs my mother had taught me before she died. Just 1 more week, I whispered to myself. I had been saying that for months now. 1 more week of saving every penny before I could pay the first month's rent on a tiny room. 1 more week before I could stop washing in public bathrooms and eating from food banks. I closed my eyes and began to play Chopin. The music filled the empty station, wrapping around me like a warm blanket. When I played, I wasn't Ellie the homeless girl anymore. I was just a musician, free and whole. My stomach growled, reminding me that I had only eaten a banana today. I ignored it and played louder. The music was food enough for now. Through the window, I could see the city lights starting to come on. Soon the station would close and I would have to find somewhere safe to sleep. The shelter on Pine Street was full most nights. The park had benches, but the police often woke me up and made me move. My fingers moved faster, dancing over the keys. In the music, I could forget that I was 22 with no home, no family, and no future. In the music, there was only now, only beauty. I thought about the letter from the music school, now crumpled at the bottom of my bag. We regret to inform you that due to budget cuts, your scholarship has been canceled. Just like that, my dreams had ended. No money meant no school meant no apartment. And soon I was here, playing a piano that nobody owned in a place where nobody listened. I finished the song with a soft chord that hung in the air like a question with no answer. Tomorrow would be the same. I would clean rooms, count pennies, and return here to play for the empty air. Your talent is your ticket out, my mother had always told me. She had believed in me so much. What would she think if she could see me now? Her daughter with dirty hair and worn-out shoes, playing beautiful music that no one would ever hear or care about. I sighed and reached for my backpack. It was getting late, and I needed to find a safe place to sleep before the night got too dark. The last notes of my song faded away into the empty train station. Then I heard it. Slow, steady clapping from somewhere in the shadows. My heart jumped in my chest. I grabbed my backpack and stood up fast, ready to run. No one was ever here this late. Please, don't stop playing. A man stepped out of the dark corner by the ticket booth. He was tall with wide shoulders. His black suit looked expensive and fit him perfectly. His shoes shined in the dim light. Everything about him screamed money and power. I was just leaving, I said, holding my backpack tight against my chest. The station closes soon. The man walked closer. His steps were slow and sure, like he had all the time in the world. I own this building, he said in a voice that had a slight accent. I decide when it closes. My stomach tightened. I knew who owned half the buildings in this city. Everyone did. The Vannucci family. They ran everything that mattered, though no one said it out loud. That was Chopin you were playing, he said, surprising me. Nocturne in C minor. You play with real feeling. Like you know what pain is. I didn't know what to say. How did a man like him know Chopin? And why was he here, in an empty train station at night? Before I could think of an answer, two men in dark suits appeared at his side. They whispered something in his ear. His face changed, turning hard as stone. He checked the shiny watch on his wrist and frowned. "What's your name?" he asked, looking at me again. "Ellie," I said, too scared to lie. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small white card. It had only a phone number on it, printed in gold. "My mother's birthday is tomorrow," he said, handing me the card. "Her piano player just canceled. You will play for her instead." The way he said it made it clear it wasn't a question. "I can't," I said, shaking my head. "I have work tomorrow and—" $5,000, he cut in. "For 1 hour of your time." My mouth fell open. $5,000? That was more money than I made in 3 months of cleaning hotel rooms. It would be enough for first and last month's rent, with money left over for food and clothes. "Unless," he said, his eyes moving over my dirty jeans and worn-out shoes, "you're secretly rich and just play piano in empty train stations for fun?" I shook my head again, not trusting my voice. Something about the way he looked at me made my skin feel hot and cold at the same time. He turned to leave, but one of his men whispered something else that made him stop. When he looked back at me, his eyes were different, more thoughtful, like he was working out a puzzle. "Where do you live, Ellie?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. I held my backpack tighter. Everything I owned in the world was inside it. "I'm between places right now," I said, trying to sound normal. Something changed in his face. Not pity, exactly. Something else I couldn't name. "Perfect," he said. "You'll stay at my guest house until tomorrow night. You can practice there." "Your guest house?" I repeated. Was this really happening? "I don't even know your name." "Antonio Vannucci," he said, like I should have known already. The name hit me like a punch. Everyone in the city knew that name. The Vannucci family ran everything from the docks to City Hall. They were not people you said no to. "My driver will pick you up here at 7, he continued. "Don't be late." "Why me?" I asked, finding my voice again. "You could hire any professional pianist in the city." Antonio Vannucci looked at me for a long moment. His dark eyes seemed to see right through me, like he could read all my secrets. "Because, Ellie," he said finally, "I believe you're exactly what I've been looking for." A sleek black car pulled up outside the station exactly at 7. A man in a suit got out and opened the back door for me. "Miss Ellie?" he asked. I nodded, clutching my backpack to my chest. The car was the nicest I had ever been in. The seats were soft leather and it smelled clean and expensive. We drove through parts of the city I rarely saw, wide streets with big houses and green lawns. Finally, we turned onto a long driveway lined with tall trees. At the end of the driveway was a house so big it took my breath away. Lights shined from windows that seemed to go on forever. A fountain splashed in the front yard. "This is the main house," the driver said, seeing my face. "The guest house is around back." Even the guest house was bigger than any place I had ever lived. A woman in a neat black dress met me at the door. "I'm Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper," she said with a small smile. "Mr. Vannucci asked me to show you to your room and make sure you have everything you need." She led me through rooms with shiny wood floors and paintings on the walls. I was afraid to touch anything. Everything looked more expensive than all the things I had ever owned put together. "This is your room," Mrs. Chen said, opening a door. "There's a bathroom through there. Dinner will be served in 1 hour in the main dining room. Mr. Vannucci has requested that you join him." The room was bigger than my old apartment. The bed had more pillows than I could count, and the sheets looked softer than clouds. There was a closet with clothes that somehow looked like they would fit me perfectly. How did he know my size? I asked, touching a blue dress that hung in the closet. Mrs. Chen's face gave away nothing. Mr. Vannucci is very good at details, she said. Would you like to freshen up before dinner? There are new toiletries in the bathroom. After she left, I sat on the edge of the huge bed trying to make sense of everything. 24 hours ago, I had been wondering where I would sleep tonight. Now I was in a mansion, about to have dinner with one of the most powerful men in the city. I took a long, hot shower, my first in weeks. The water pressure was perfect, and the soap smelled like flowers. I put on the blue dress and a pair of soft shoes I found in the closet. They all fit like they were made for me. As I followed Mrs. Chen to the main house for dinner, my stomach was in knots. What did Antonio Vannucci really want from me? No one gave a homeless girl a place to stay, and $5,000 just to play piano. Whatever game he was playing, I was about to find out the rules. I followed Mrs. Chen through a garden path to the main house, my new shoes crunching on the gravel. The night air was cool on my clean skin, and I couldn't stop touching the soft fabric of the blue dress. 3 months of wearing the same 2 outfits had made me forget how nice clean clothes could feel. The main house was even bigger up close. Lights glowed from dozens of windows, and the front door was tall enough for a giant. Inside, the floor was shiny marble that reflected my face when I looked down. Paintings hung on the walls in heavy gold frames, and a chandelier sparkled overhead like 1,000 stars. "This way, Miss Ellie," Mrs. Chen said, leading me down a long hallway. I tried not to stare at everything we passed, but it was hard. One room had a piano that looked newer and shinier than any I'd ever seen. We came to a big dining room with a table long enough to seat 20 people, but only one place was set at the far end and another at the head of the table. Antonio Vannucci was already there, sitting straight and tall in his chair. "Ah, Ellie," he said, standing as I entered. "The clothes fit well, I see." I nodded, still wondering how he had known my size. "Thank you," I said. "For the clothes and the room. It's very nice." His mouth almost smiled. "Please sit," he said, waving to the empty chair. A man in a white jacket appeared from a side door with 2 plates. He set one in front of me and one in front of Antonio. The food looked fancy and smelled amazing. My stomach growled so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. "When was the last time you ate a proper meal?" Antonio asked, picking up his fork. I looked down at my plate, embarrassed. "I had a sandwich yesterday," I lied. It had really been a half-eaten burger I found in the hotel trash, but I couldn't tell him that. He cut a small piece of his steak and chewed it slowly. "You're lying," he said after he swallowed. "But it doesn't matter, eat now." I picked up my fork with shaking hands and took a bite. The food tasted so good that tears came to my eyes. I forced myself to eat slowly, even though I wanted to stuff everything in my mouth at once. "Tomorrow, you will play for my mother's birthday," Antonio said. "She is turning 75. Music brings her joy." "What should I play?" I asked between bites. "Debussy, perhaps. Claire de Lune is her favorite. Can you play that?" I nodded. It was one of my favorites, too. "I can play it." "Good." Antonio took a sip of his red wine. "And after that, we will discuss your future." A cold feeling spread through my stomach, mixing with the warm food. "My future?" His dark eyes studied me. "A talented pianist should not be sleeping in train stations, Ellie. It's a waste." "How did you know I was sleeping there?" I asked, putting down my fork. "I know many things," he said simply. "I make it my business to know." The rest of the meal passed in silence. I tried to enjoy the food, but my mind was racing. What did this powerful man want from me? Why did he care where I slept, or if I played piano well? People like Antonio Vannucci didn't help people like me unless they wanted something in return. After dinner, Mrs. Chen showed me back to the guest house. In my room, I found a stack of music sheets on the bed. Debussy, Chopin, Mozart, Bach. All my favorites. On top was a note in neat handwriting. Practice what you wish. The piano room is yours until morning. I changed into soft pajamas I found in a drawer and followed the sound of quiet music coming from down the hall. The piano room was smaller than I expected, but perfect. The piano was a beautiful black grand with keys that felt like butter under my fingers. I played until my eyes grew heavy, losing myself in the music. For a few hours, I forgot about Antonio Vannucci and his mysterious plans for my future. I was just Ellie again, the girl who loved music more than anything. Morning came with a soft knock on my door. Mrs. Chen brought a tray with eggs, toast, and fresh orange juice. "Mr. Vannucci has been called away on business," she said. "He asks that you make yourself comfortable and practice for tonight. The car will take you to Mrs. Vannucci's house at 6. I spent the day moving between the piano room and the garden outside. It was strange to have nothing to do, nowhere to be, no rooms to clean, no boss to please, no worry about where to sleep or what to eat. I kept waiting for someone to tell me it was all a mistake, that I needed to leave. But no one did. At 4, Mrs. Chen brought me a new dress. This one black and simple but clearly expensive. "Mr. Vannucci thought this would be appropriate for the evening," she said. "Is he always this controlling?" I asked as I touched the soft fabric. Mrs. Chen's face gave away nothing. "Mr. Vannucci is very particular," she said. "He likes things a certain way. And people too?" She almost smiled. "Especially people." The car arrived at 6 exactly. This time Antonio was waiting inside. He wore a black suit that looked like it cost more than a year's rent in my old apartment. His eyes moved over me as I slid into the seat across from him. "The dress is perfect," he said. "Your choice," I reminded him. "Yes." He nodded once. "I rarely make mistakes." The car pulled away from the guest house and headed through tall gates at the edge of the property. As we drove, I watched Antonio from the corner of my eye. He checked his phone several times, his face serious. "Are you nervous?" he asked suddenly, catching me looking at him. "Should I be?" His mouth almost smiled again. "My mother can be demanding, but she loves music. Play well, and she will adore you. And if I don't play well, that won't happen," he said with complete confidence. We drove to a part of the city I had never seen before, a neighborhood with houses set far back from the street, hidden behind walls and trees. The car turned into a driveway and stopped in front of a house that looked older and more elegant than Antonio's. "My mother prefers to live in the family home," he explained as he helped me from the car. His hand was warm and strong on mine. "I built my own place 5 years ago." Inside, the house was quiet and smelled like flowers and something medicinal. An older woman in a nurse's uniform met us in the hallway. "How is she today, Maria?" Antonio asked. "Good day, Mr. Vannucci. She's having a good day. The pain is less. And she's been looking forward to the music." Antonio nodded, then turned to me. "My mother is ill," he said quietly. "She tires easily. Play for 30 minutes, no more." I followed him up a wide staircase to a room at the end of a long hallway. He knocked once, then opened the door. Inside, sitting by a window in a high-backed chair, was a tiny woman with Antonio's dark eyes. Her hair was white and pulled back from her face, and her hands rested on a blanket in her lap. "Antonio," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "You're late." "Traffic, mother," he said, bending to kiss her cheek. "I've brought someone special to play for you. This is Ellie." Her sharp eyes turned to me, looking me up and down. "Where did my son find you, child? You don't look like his usual friends." I glanced at Antonio, not sure what to say. His face gave nothing away. "I played piano at the train station," I said finally. "He heard me and asked me to play for you." Something like surprise crossed her face. Then she smiled. "The train station? How interesting." Antonio has always had an eye for hidden treasures. She waved a thin hand toward a piano in the corner. "Play for me, Ellie, from the train station. Let's see if my son's judgment is as good as he thinks it is." I sat at the piano, suddenly nervous. This frail woman had a strength about her that was almost scary. I placed my fingers on the keys and began to play Claire de Lune, letting the gentle notes fill the room. As I played, I felt myself relax. The music was like an old friend, familiar and comforting. I forgot about Antonio watching me, forgot about his mother's sharp eyes. I was just Ellie again, the girl who loved music. When I finished, the room was quiet. I turned to see Mrs. Vannucci with tears in her eyes. "Beautiful," she whispered. "You play from the heart, child. That's rare." I felt my face grow warm. "Thank you." "Play something else," she said. "Something with fire this time." I turned back to the piano and began Chopin's Revolutionary Etude, my fingers flying over the keys. The music was fast and passionate, filling the room with sound. When the last note faded, I was breathing hard, as if I had been running. Mrs. Vannucci clapped her thin hands together. "Wonderful. Antonio, where have you been hiding this girl?" Antonio moved to stand beside me, his hand resting lightly on the piano. "She's been hiding herself, Mother, but not anymore." The way he said it sent a shiver down my back. I had stepped across some line into his world, and I wasn't sure I would ever find my way back. 2 weeks flew by like leaves in the wind. I stayed in the guest house, playing for Mrs. Vannucci 3 times a week. Each time, her smile grew warmer, and she asked me to stay longer. She told me stories about Antonio as a little boy, how he had taken piano lessons for years, but never had the patience for it. I tried to picture Antonio as a small child sitting at a piano, his feet not touching the floor, but the image wouldn't come clear in my head. The guest house became familiar. I knew which floorboards creaked, and how the light changed in the piano room as the day went on. Mrs. Chen brought me meals and new clothes without me asking. Sometimes I found books on my bed, music history, biographies of famous pianists, things I had always wanted to read but could never afford. One night, I was practicing a difficult piece by Rachmaninoff when I felt someone watching me. I turned to find Antonio standing in the doorway, his suit jacket off, and his tie loose around his neck. "You're getting better," he said, coming into the room, "even with the hard pieces." "Your mother requested it," I explained. "She likes Rachmaninoff." Antonio nodded, sitting in a chair near the piano. "She always did like a challenge." I watched his face as he listened to me play. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. I wondered what he did all day, what kind of business kept him away from dawn till long after dark. I had my guesses, of course. Everyone in the city knew what the Vannucci family was involved in, even if no one talked about it out loud. "You're thinking very loudly," Antonio said suddenly. "What's on your mind?" I stopped playing, my fingers hovering over the keys. "I was wondering when we were going to talk about my future," I said. "You mentioned it that first night, but we've never discussed it." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. Tomorrow, come to the main house for dinner. We'll talk then." The next night, I wore one of the new dresses that had appeared in my closet, a deep green one that matched my eyes. My hair was clean and shiny, and my skin had lost the dull look it had from months of poor sleep and worse food. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Dinner was quiet, just the 2 of us at that massive table. As we finished eating, Antonio pushed his plate away and looked at me directly. "I have a proposal for you, Ellie," he said. I want to pay for you to finish your music degree. My fork clattered against my plate. What? You had a scholarship that was cut, correct? At the conservatory? I want to reinstate it. Not as a scholarship, but as a private sponsorship. You would finish your degree and continue playing for my mother 3 times a week. I stared at him, trying to understand. Why would you do that? Antonio's face was calm, but his eyes were intense. My mother is dying. Cancer. The doctors give her 6 months, maybe a year. Your music brings her joy in a way nothing else does. The blunt way he said it, my mother is dying, made my throat tight. I'm sorry, I whispered. He waved away my sympathy. Don't be sorry. Be prepared. When she has bad days, she'll want different music. Sadder pieces sometimes. Other days, only happy ones will do. You really love her, I said, seeing it clearly for the first time. Something flickered across his face. She's my mother, he said, as if that explained everything. Maybe it did. And after... I couldn't bring myself to finish the sentence. After she's gone? Antonio's voice was steady. We'll discuss that when the time comes. For now, do we have an agreement? You finish your degree, play for my mother, and live here where you're safe and comfortable. Safe, comfortable. Words I hadn't associated with my life in a long time. But there was something else under his offer. Something unspoken. What about your business? I asked carefully. What does your mother think about that? His eyes hardened just a fraction. My business is my business, Ellie. It doesn't concern you. But it concerns your mother. Antonio was quiet for a moment. My mother understands the world we live in. She doesn't always approve of my methods, but she knows I do what's necessary. Before I could answer, a man in a dark suit appeared at the door. Mr. Vannucci, your mother is asking for you. She's having a bad night. Antonio stood immediately. I'll go to her. Ellie, come with me. We drove quickly to Mrs. Vannucci's house. Inside, the nurse, Maria, met us with a worried face. She woke up in pain, Mr. Vannucci. The medication is helping now, but she's been asking for you. And for the music. Antonio took my arm and led me upstairs. Mrs. Vannucci was in bed, looking smaller and frailer than the last time I'd seen her. Her face was pale, but her eyes lit up when she saw us. There you are, she said weakly. I was having such dark dreams. I needed to hear something beautiful. I went straight to the piano and began to play a gentle Mozart piece, something light and sweet. As the music filled the room, I watched Mrs. Vannucci's face relax. Antonio sat beside her bed, holding her thin hand in his. The tenderness in his face made my heart squeeze. This dangerous man who made people afraid with just his name was also a son who loved his mother. I played for an hour, moving from piece to piece without stopping. When I finally paused, Mrs. Vannucci was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Antonio motioned for me to follow him out of the room. In the hallway, he ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking very tired. Thank you, he said. The music helps more than the medicine sometimes. It was nothing, I said. I'm glad I could help. He looked at me for a long moment. It wasn't nothing, Ellie. Don't diminish what you give her. What you give us both. The way he said it made my face warm. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. A softness, a vulnerability. It made him seem more human, less like the scary figure everyone whispered about. As we drove back to his house, Antonio was quiet, looking out the window at the dark streets. Finally, he spoke. My mother thinks I don't know what people say about me, about our family. She protects me still, even now. And do you? I asked. Know what they say? His mouth curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Of course. I know everything that happens in this city, Ellie. That's how I stay alive. The car pulled up to the main house. Instead of dropping me at the guest house, Antonio asked me to join him for a drink on the terrace. The night was clear, with stars sprinkled across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Antonio poured amber liquid into 2 glasses and handed one to me. The smell was strong and rich. I took a small sip, feeling it burn all the way down my throat. "My father wanted me to be a businessman," Antonio said, looking up at the stars. "My mother wanted me to be a musician. Neither of them got exactly what they wanted." "What did you want?" I asked. He looked at me, surprised, as if no one had ever asked him that question before. "I wanted—" He stopped, then shook his head. "It doesn't matter now. We become what we need to be." "I don't believe that," I said. "We always have choices." "Do we?" He turned to face me fully. "Did you choose to be homeless? To play piano in an empty train station for no one to hear?" I flinched at the harshness of his words. "That was different. I had bad luck." "No, Ellie. You had the same thing I had. Circumstances beyond your control. We're not so different, you and I." Before I could argue, his phone rang. The change in him was instant. His face hardened, his eyes went cold. He answered with a sharp word, listened for a moment, then spoke in quick, angry Italian. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Someone was in trouble. When he hung up, he looked at me with different eyes, distant and calculating. "I have to go," he said. "Business." "At this hour?" I asked before I could stop myself. His smile was thin and dangerous. "My kind of business doesn't keep regular hours, Ellie." As he turned to leave, I touched his arm. "Wait. I never answered your proposal." He paused, looking at my hand on his sleeve. "And?" "Yes," I said. "I'll stay. I'll play for your mother and finish my degree. But?" His eyebrow raised. "But I won't pretend not to see what's happening around me. I won't be blind to who you are, or what you do." For a moment I thought he would be angry. Instead, he laughed, a real laugh that softened his whole face. "Blind? Ellie, you see me more clearly than anyone has in years. That's why you're here." As he walked away, his phone already back at his ear, I wondered what I had gotten myself into. I was living in the home of a dangerous man, playing music for his dying mother, accepting his money and protection. Was I any better than the people who looked the other way when the Vannucci family did something wrong? Or was I becoming just another part of Antonio's world, another person under his control? But when I thought of Mrs. Vannucci's smile when I played for her, when I remembered Antonio's face as he held his mother's hand, I couldn't make myself regret my choice. There was more to this man than the cold, powerful figure everyone feared. There was pain and love, and vulnerability too. And for some reason I couldn't explain, I wanted to know all of him, not just the parts he showed to the world. The days grew into weeks, and the weeks became months. I settled into a routine that once would have seemed impossible. 3 days a week I played for Mrs. Vannucci, whose good days became fewer, but whose smile never dimmed when I walked into her room. 2 days a week I attended classes at the conservatory, my tuition paid in full by Antonio. The other students whispered when I walked by. They had heard rumors about my sponsor, but no one dared ask me directly. On a warm spring evening, Antonio asked me to go with him to a charity event at the Grand Hotel downtown. "It's for the Children's Hospital," he explained, as his driver took us through the busy streets. "My family has supported it for years." I smoothed my hands over the silky blue dress he had chosen for me. It felt strange to be going out in public with him. In the months I had lived in his guest house, we had spent time together only in private, dinners at his home, quiet evenings on the terrace, visits to his mother. Now we would be seen by everyone who mattered in the city. "Are you nervous?" Antonio asked, watching me fidget with my dress. Should I be? His mouth curved in that almost smile. Just stay close to me and smile. The hotel ballroom took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen rain. Flowers covered every table. People in expensive clothes stood in small groups, talking and laughing. A small orchestra played soft music in the corner. As soon as we walked in, I felt eyes turn to us. Antonio's hand rested lightly on my lower back, guiding me through the crowd. People nodded to him respectfully, some with smiles, others with wary eyes. Mr. Vannucci, a large man with a red face, approached us. So good of you to come, and with such lovely company. His small eyes looked me up and down in a way that made me want to hide behind Antonio. Mayor Collins, Antonio said coolly, I believe you know my friend Ellie. She's a pianist at the conservatory. The mayor's eyes widened just a fraction. A pianist? How unexpected. Antonio's hand pressed more firmly against my back. Ellie's talent is extraordinary. She plays for my mother regularly. Ah, how is your dear mother? The mayor asked, his voice suddenly soft with fake concern. Fighting, Antonio said simply, as always. We moved on, greeting more people. Each conversation felt like walking through a field of hidden traps. Everyone smiled at Antonio, but few of the smiles reached their eyes. They looked at me with open curiosity, some with pity, others with calculation. Smile, Antonio whispered in my ear as we posed for a photographer from the local paper. They're all watching. Who's watching? I whispered back. Everyone, he said, his voice low. The mayor who takes my money but pretends not to know me in public. The police commissioner who wants to build a case against me. My competitors who would love to see me distracted or vulnerable. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm room. I had become part of his image, perhaps even a potential weakness. The thought made me both proud and afraid. Later, as we danced to a slow song, I felt someone watching us intently. Following Antonio's gaze, I saw a man standing by the bar, his eyes fixed on us with open hatred. Who is that? I asked quietly. Antonio's hand tightened on mine. Carlo Di Natelli. He used to work for my father until he decided he deserved more power. He doesn't look happy to see us together, I observed. No, Antonio agreed. Which is precisely why you're here. His words hit me like cold water. I pulled back slightly. So I'm just for show? To prove something to your enemies? Something flickered in Antonio's eyes. Hurt, maybe, or anger. Is that what you think? Before he could say more, one of his men appeared at his side, whispering urgently in his ear. Antonio's face hardened. Excuse me, he said to me. Business, I won't be long. He left me standing alone on the dance floor. I made my way to our table, feeling strangely lost without him beside me. I was contemplating finding the bathroom, just to have somewhere to go, when a woman in a stunning red dress sat down beside me. So you're Antonio's latest distraction, she said, her smile not touching her eyes. Her voice was like honey, with something bitter mixed in. I'm Isabella. I used to be where you are. My stomach dropped. I'm just his mother's pianist, I said, the words sounding hollow even to me. She laughed, the sound bright and sharp. Is that what he told you? Let me give you some advice. When he's done with you, leave quietly. The ones who make demands tend to disappear. Fear crawled up my spine. What do you mean, disappear? Isabella leaned closer. Her perfume was sweet and heavy. Antonio Vannucci doesn't keep people around when they're no longer useful. I was lucky. I just got sent away with some money. Others weren't so fortunate. Before I could ask more, she stood up, her red dress swirling around her legs. Just be careful, little pianist. You're playing a much more dangerous tune than you realize. As she walked away, I felt the fantasy I'd been living in start to crumble. What was I doing here? Playing make-believe with a dangerous man who collected people like chess pieces? The whispers I'd tried so hard to ignore came rushing back. Antonio Vannucci, the man who made problems disappear, the man whose enemies had a habit of leaving town. Or worse. When Antonio returned 20 minutes later, his face was calm, but his eyes were stormy. He must have read something in my expression because he stopped short. "What happened?" he demanded. "Who spoke to you?" "Isabella," I said, watching his reaction closely. "She had some interesting things to say about being your distraction." His jaw tightened. "Isabella has a talent for twisting the truth." "So she wasn't your girlfriend?" "That was years ago," he said dismissively. "She wanted more than I could give." "And did she disappear?" I asked, the word hanging in the air between us. Antonio's eyes narrowed. "Is that what she told you?" He shook his head. "Isabella lives in Milan now. With an allowance from me, she was becoming unstable." "And the others she mentioned? The ones who weren't so lucky?" He took my arm, his grip firm but not painful. "I think it's time we left." In the car, we sat in silence. The lights of the city flashed by, but all I could see was Isabella's knowing smile, the pity in the mayor's eyes when he looked at me. "Not everything is a game, Ellie," Antonio finally said. "Not you." I turned to face him. "Then what am I? Why am I really here?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Because you see me," he said quietly. "Not just what I can do for you, or what I might do to you. From that first night at the train station, you've looked at me, really looked, and not flinched away." "I didn't know who you were then," I reminded him. "Didn't you?" "The Vannucci name is hardly a secret in this city." He had a point. I had known, at least in some vague way. But that night, tired and hungry and afraid, all I had seen was a man who knew Chopin and looked at me like I mattered. "Your mother said something to me last week," I said slowly. "She said you need someone to remind you there's beauty in this ugly world. Is that what I am? A reminder?" Antonio's face softened. "My mother says many things. Not all of them are for sharing. She also said you protect her from the truth, just like your father did." His expression closed like a door slamming shut. "My mother doesn't need to know certain things. But I do." "You've made it clear you don't want to be blind," he reminded me. "Be careful what you wish for, Ellie. Some truths are harder to live with than others." As we pulled up to his house, I made a decision. "I want to know," I said firmly. "Whatever it is you think I can't handle, I want the truth." Antonio's eyes were sad as he looked at me. "No, Ellie, you don't." That night, I lay awake in my beautiful room in the guest house, thinking about Isabella's warning, about the hatred in Carlo Dinatelli's eyes, about the way people had looked at me at the charity event. Was I just another possession to Antonio? A pretty distraction that would be discarded when he grew tired of me? But then I remembered the tenderness in his face when he sat with his mother, the way he listened when I played, really listened like the music touched something deep inside him. Could a man like that, a man who loved music and his mother and who looked at me like I was something precious, could he really be the monster everyone feared? For the first time since I had stepped into Antonio's world, I was truly afraid. Not of him, but of my own heart, which was already half in love with a man I didn't fully know. The morning sun woke me early, streaming through the curtains I had forgotten to close. I had barely slept, my mind spinning with questions about Antonio, about myself, about the world I had stepped into that was so different from anything I had known before. I was halfway through my morning coffee when Mrs. Chen knocked on my door. Her usually calm face looked worried. "Miss Ellie, there are police at the main house. Many of them." My heart jumped in my chest. "Police? Why?" She shook her head. "I don't know. But Mr. Vannucci asked that you stay here until they're gone." I nodded, but as soon as she left, I went to the window. From there, I could see the front of the main house. 3 police cars sat in the driveway, their lights flashing. Men in dark suits stood on the steps, talking to someone I couldn't see. I should have stayed in the guest house like Antonio wanted. I should have minded my own business. But the questions from last night were still burning in my mind. I slipped out the back door and followed the garden path that led to the kitchen entrance of the main house. Inside, I could hear angry voices coming from the front room. I moved quietly down the hallway, staying close to the wall. "We have a warrant, Mr. Vannucci," a man's voice said firmly. "You can cooperate, or we can do this the hard way." "By all means, detective. Search away." Antonio's voice was calm but cold. "You won't find anything because there's nothing to find." I peeked around the corner. Antonio stood in the center of the room, surrounded by men in suits. His face was a mask of control, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. One of the men turned and saw me. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing in my direction. Everyone turned to look at me. Antonio's eyes widened just a fraction, then narrowed. "That's Miss Edwards. She plays piano for my mother." A tall man with tired eyes stepped toward me. "Miss Edwards? I'm Detective Rivera. I'd like to ask you a few questions." Antonio's lawyer, a small man with a sharp face, moved between us. "Miss Edwards is not involved in Mr. Vannucci's business affairs. She's a music student." Detective Rivera ignored him. "Would you mind speaking with me privately, Miss Edwards?" I looked at Antonio. His face gave away nothing, but his eyes sent a clear message. "Be careful." "All right," I said. The detective led me to a small room off the main hall. It looked like a place where Antonio might meet with his business partners. Dark wood paneling, heavy curtains, a large desk. "Please, sit," Detective Rivera said, pointing to a chair. He took a seat across from me, watching me closely. "How long have you known Mr. Vannucci?" I thought back to that first night at the train station. "About 4 months." "And you live here?" "In the guest house. I play piano for Mrs. Vannucci several times a week. She's ill." The detective nodded, writing something in a small notebook. "Miss Edwards, we have reason to believe Mr. Vannucci is involved in money laundering and racketeering. Are you aware of any illegal activities taking place here?" My mouth went dry. I thought of the late-night phone calls, the meetings behind closed doors, the way people looked at Antonio with fear barely hidden behind their smiles. "I'm his mother's pianist," I said. "That's all." Detective Rivera leaned forward. "Young women like you get caught in the crossfire, Miss Edwards. If you know something, now's the time to speak up. We can protect you." "I don't need protection," I said, but even to my own ears I didn't sound sure. "Don't you?" He slid a folder across the table to me. "These were taken last week." Inside were photos of Antonio meeting with men I didn't recognize. In one, money was clearly changing hands. In another, Antonio's face was hard with anger as he spoke to a man who looked terrified. "Mr. Vannucci has many business interests," I said, closing the folder and pushing it away. "Is that what he tells you?" The detective's voice was almost kind. "Miss Edwards, people who get close to the Vannucci family tend to end up in one of 2 places, on their payroll or in the ground." A chill ran through me. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you." He handed me a card with his name and number. "When you're ready to talk, call me." After the police left, having searched the house and found nothing, Antonio locked himself in his study with his lawyers. I went back to the guest house, Detective Rivera's card burning a hole in my pocket. That evening, Antonio came to find me as I practiced on the piano. He stood in the doorway, watching me play. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, his usually perfect suit slightly wrinkled. "You spoke to Rivera," he said. It wasn't a question. I stopped playing. He had questions. I didn't have answers. "What did he show you?" "Photos. Of you with men I don't know." Antonio came into the room and sat heavily in a chair. "Those men work for me." We were discussing business. "What kind of business?" I asked, the question I had been afraid to ask for months finally coming out. He looked at me for a long moment. "The kind that keeps the city running. The kind that pays for your tuition and my mother's medical care and this house and everything in it." "Legal business?" His mouth twisted. "Not always. No." The truth I had known but pretended not to know settled between us like a wall. Antonio Vannucci was exactly who everyone said he was, a man who lived outside the law, who used fear and power to get what he wanted. "They found nothing today," he continued. "They never do, but they'll be back." "Because they know," I said quietly. "Even without proof, they know." "Yes." He rubbed his face with his hands, suddenly looking older. "Everyone knows, Ellie. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" What was I going to do? I had been living in a dream world, pretending that playing for Mrs. Vannucci and going to school were the only parts of my life that mattered. But the truth was, I had made a deal with a man who hurt people, who broke laws, who lived by his own rules. "I don't know," I answered honestly. Antonio stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden. "My mother asked about you today. She wanted to know if you would still come to play for her tomorrow." "Of course," I said automatically. Whatever else was happening, I wouldn't abandon Mrs. Vannucci. "She likes Beethoven when she's upset," he said. "The Moonlight Sonata calms her." "Is she upset about the police?" Antonio turned to look at me, his face sad. "No. She's upset about me, about what I've become, about what I've done to the family name." "She knows?" I asked, surprised. "She's always known." His voice was bitter. "She pretends not to for my sake, just like she pretended not to know what my father did. But she knows." I thought about Mrs. Vannucci, small and frail in her bed, listening to me play. I thought about her sharp eyes that missed nothing, her gentle hands that held her sons with such love despite knowing what those hands had done. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you need to decide, Ellie. Rivera gave you his card, didn't he? You could call him right now. Tell him everything you've seen, everything you've guessed. It wouldn't be enough to put me away, but it would start something that couldn't be stopped." My heart pounded in my ears. "Is that what you think I'll do?" Antonio shook his head. "No. I think you'll keep my secrets, just like my mother does, because despite everything, you care for me, and that terrifies you." He was right. That was the worst part. He was right. Despite knowing who he was, what he had done, I cared for him. More than cared. When had that happened? When had the fear and wariness turned to something else? "I should leave," I said. The words coming out before I had fully formed the thought. "Yes," Antonio agreed, surprising me. "You should. This isn't your world, Ellie. You deserve better than this. Better than me." "And your mother?" I asked. "What about her?" "I'll find someone else to play for her." "No one who plays like I do," I said. It wasn't pride, just truth. Mrs. Vannucci had told me many times that my music spoke to her heart like no one else's. "No," Antonio agreed. "No one who plays like you do." We looked at each other across the room, so many unspoken words between us. I had come from nothing, from sleeping on park benches and playing an abandoned piano in an empty train station. He had given me shelter, safety, a chance to finish my education. but at what cost? I need time to think, I finally said. Antonio nodded once. Take all the time you need. But know this, Ellie. Whatever you decide, I won't stop you. If you want to leave, I'll make sure you have enough money to go anywhere. Start over. If you want to stay, he paused. If you stay, it's with open eyes. No more pretending. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I took Detective Rivera's card from my pocket and looked at it. One phone call could change everything. One phone call could bring down Antonio Vannucci and his empire of shadows. But then I thought of Mrs. Vannucci's smile when I played for her. I thought of Antonio's face when he talked about finding another way, the hint of longing there. Was there a chance for him to change? To become something different from what his father had been? And even if there wasn't, even if he remained exactly what he was, could I walk away from him now? Now that I had seen all of him, the darkness and the light, the cruelty and the tenderness, the man who frightened powerful people, and the son who held his mother's hand so gently. I didn't know. For the first time since coming to live in Antonio's world, I truly didn't know what I would do next. 3 days passed, and I didn't see Antonio. I spent my time between the conservatory and Mrs. Vannucci's bedside, where I played her favorite pieces and pretended not to notice how much weaker she seemed each time I visited. Detective Rivera's card sat on my bedside table, a constant reminder of the choice I still hadn't made. On the 4th day, as I was leaving Mrs. Vannucci's room, Maria the nurse stopped me in the hallway. She's getting worse, she said quietly. The doctor doesn't think she has much time left. My throat tightened. Does Antonio know? Maria nodded. He's been with her all night. He just stepped out to take a phone call. I found Antonio in the garden behind the house. He stood with his back to me, his phone pressed to his ear. Even from a distance, I could tell something was wrong. His shoulders were tight, and his free hand was clenched in a fist. No, he said sharply into the phone. That's not acceptable. Handle it properly or I'll find someone who can. He ended the call and turned around, stopping short when he saw me. For a moment, his face showed everything. Grief, anger, fear. Then the mask slipped back into place, and he was the Antonio everyone feared again. Ellie, he said, his voice carefully controlled. I didn't know you were here. I just finished playing for your mother, I said. Maria told me she's getting worse. Something flickered in his eyes. Yes, the doctor says it could be days. Maybe less. I took a step toward him. I'm sorry, Antonio. He looked away. So am I. We stood in silence for a moment, the spring breeze ruffling the leaves around us. So many unspoken words hung in the air between us. I should go, I said finally. You should be with her. As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me. Have you decided yet? About staying? I looked back at him. Not yet. He nodded once, his face giving nothing away. When you do, let me know. I'll respect whatever choice you make. I had reached the gate when the sound of screeching tires made me turn around. A black car I didn't recognize pulled up to the front of the house. 4 men got out, moving quickly toward the front door. Something in their movements, fast, confident, dangerous, made my blood run cold. I ducked behind a large bush, my heart pounding in my ears. Through the branches, I saw Antonio step out of the garden to meet them. His face was like stone, but his hand moved toward his jacket in a way that made me think he had a gun hidden there. Dinatelli, he said coldly to the first man, the same man who had watched us with hatred at the charity event. You have a lot of nerve coming here. Carlo Dinatelli smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I heard your mother isn't doing well, Antonio. I came to pay my respects. She's not receiving visitors, Antonio said. His voice was calm, but I could feel the danger coming off him in waves. No? Dinatelli looked at the men around him. That's too bad. I had so hoped to see Sophia one last time. We have unfinished business, she and I. Antonio took a step forward. My mother has no business with you. No? She didn't tell you? Dinatelli's smile grew wider. Your father promised me a place in the family. Sophia knows all about it. She was there when we shook hands, before you decided I wasn't good enough. I could see Antonio's control slipping. Leave now, and I might let you live. Dinatelli laughed. Big words from a man whose empire is crumbling. The police were here, weren't they? They're getting closer, Antonio. And when they come for you, I'll be ready to step in. Just like your father wanted. I watched, frozen in fear, as one of Dinatelli's men reached inside his jacket. Antonio saw it too. In a blur of movement too fast for me to follow, he pulled out a gun and pointed it at the man. Tell your dog to stand down, Antonio said, his voice deadly quiet. For a moment, no one moved. Then Dinatelli nodded to his man, who slowly put his hands up. We're just talking, Antonio, Dinatelli said, his voice smooth as oil. No need for guns among old friends. We were never friends, Antonio said. Now get off my property before I forget my manners. Dinatelli's face hardened. This isn't over. Your mother is dying, the police are closing in, and your pretty little pianist is going to run the first chance she gets. You're vulnerable, Antonio, and I've waited a long time for this moment. My breath caught in my throat. He knew about me. How did he know about me? Antonio's face gave nothing away, but his gun hand was steady. That was your last warning. Leave. After a tense moment, Dinatelli nodded to his men. They backed up slowly, got into their car, and drove away. Only when the car was out of sight did Antonio lower his gun. I stepped out from behind the bush, my legs shaking. Antonio turned, and for a second, I saw naked fear on his face. Ellie, he said, quickly putting the gun away. How much did you hear? Enough, I said. Who is he, really? What does he want? Antonio ran a hand over his face. He suddenly looked exhausted. Carlo Dinatelli worked for my father. He thought he would take over when my father died, but I got there first. He's been waiting for a chance to challenge me ever since. And now he thinks he has one? Because your mother is dying? Antonio's eyes were dark with pain. My mother has been the heart of this family for 50 years. Even the worst criminals in this city respect her. Without her? He didn't finish the thought. We walked back to the house together. At the door, Antonio stopped. You should pack your things, Ellie. Go somewhere safe until this is over. What about your mother? I asked. She needs me. I need you safe more, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I looked at him, really looked at him. Under the powerful exterior, I saw a man terrified of losing the two women he cared about most, his mother to death, and me to my own choice to leave. I'm not going anywhere, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. Antonio stared at me. Dinatelli threatened you directly. Do you understand what that means? He'll use you to get to me. Let him try, I said, a strange calm settling over me. I'm staying, Antonio, for your mother, and for you. His face showed disbelief, then something like hope. Why? It was time for the truth, the whole truth. Because I love you, I said simply. And love means staying, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. For a moment, Antonio looked like I had struck him. Then he reached out and pulled me to him, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. Ellie, he whispered into my hair. You don't know what you're saying. You don't know what loving me will cost you. I pulled back to look at his face. I've seen the worst of your world now. I've seen you with a gun in your hand, ready to kill. I've heard what people say about you, the terrible things they think you've done. And I'm still here. Antonio's phone rang, the sound sharp in the quiet garden. He answered it, listened for a moment. Then his face changed. "I'll be right there," he said, his voice tight with fear. "What is it?" I asked as he ended the call. "My mother," he said, already moving toward the door. "She's asking for both of us." We hurried to Mrs. Vannucci's room. Inside, the doctor and Maria stood by her bed, their faces grim. Mrs. Vannucci looked so small now, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes lit up when she saw us. "There you are," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "My son and my beautiful pianist. Come closer." We moved to her bedside. Antonio took one of her hands and I took the other. Her skin felt like paper, so thin I could see the blue veins underneath. "Antonio," she said, fixing her dark eyes on her son. "Promise me something." He knelt beside her bed. "Anything, mother. Find another way." Her voice grew stronger, filled with a fierce love. "Your father's path brought power but never peace. You can choose differently." Antonio's face crumpled. For the first time since I had known him, he looked lost. "I don't know if I can." "You can," she insisted, "but not alone." Her gaze shifted to me. "He needs someone to remind him of beauty in this ugly world, someone who sees him clearly and loves him anyway." I felt tears running down my face. "I'll try," I promised. Mrs. Vannucci smiled. "Good. Now, Ellie, will you play for me one last time? Something happy. I want to go with beautiful music in my ears." I moved to the piano in the corner of her room. My hands were shaking, but as soon as I touched the keys, a calm came over me. I played Mozart's Piano Sonata No. 16 in C major, bright, joyful, full of light. As the music filled the room, I watched Antonio holding his mother's hand, whispering something in her ear that made her smile. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. Whatever darkness lived in Antonio Vannucci, there was light too. Love for his mother, and maybe, just maybe, love for me. When I finished playing, Mrs. Vannucci's eyes were closed, a peaceful smile on her face. The doctor moved to check her pulse, then looked at Antonio and shook his head. She was gone. Antonio sat with her for a long time, holding her hand and speaking softly in Italian. I stayed at the piano, giving him space to say goodbye. Finally, he stood up and turned to me. "She's at peace now," he said, his voice steady but his eyes filled with grief. "And we have work to do." "Work?" I asked. "Yes." He took my hands in his. "Finding another way. Like she asked me to. If you'll help me?" In that moment, I made my final choice. I would not run from this man or his world. I would not call Detective Rivera. I would stay and help Antonio become what his mother had always hoped he could be. Something more than his father's son. Something better than the feared boss of a crime family. "I'll help you," I said, squeezing his hands. "We'll find another way together." 1 year later, I stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Through a small gap in the curtain, I could see the packed audience, all dressed in their finest clothes. In the front row, Antonio sat straight and tall in his perfectly tailored suit, his dark eyes fixed on the stage where I would soon play. So much had changed in a year. After Mrs. Vannucci's funeral, Antonio had locked himself in his study for 3 days. When he finally emerged, something in him had shifted. "For my mother," he had said, "and for you, I'm going to try." And try he did. It wasn't easy. Some parts of the Vannucci empire had been built on things that couldn't be fixed with a simple apology. But Antonio started separating the bad parts from the good. The shipping company that had moved illegal goods now only carried legal cargo. The construction businesses that had once been used to launder money now built real buildings with honest workers. It hadn't come without a price. Carlo Dinatelli and others had fought back hard. There were nights I'd woken to the sound of Antonio's phone ringing at 3 in the morning, nights when he hadn't come home at all. Once, he'd returned with a cut above his eye and wouldn't tell me how he got it. The hardest part had been the deal with the FBI. Antonio had offered them information on worse players in exchange for immunity on certain charges. It was a dangerous game, walking the line between his old world and the new one we were trying to build. There were still parts of his business that lived in the shadows, things he didn't tell me about to protect me. But we had survived. And now, here I was, about to play my graduation recital at Carnegie Hall, the most famous music stage in the country. The Piano Scholarship Foundation Antonio had created in his mother's name had helped not just me, but dozens of other students from poor backgrounds. It was one of the good things that had come from all the bad. 5 minutes, Miss Edwards, a stagehand whispered, breaking into my thoughts. I took a deep breath and straightened my dark green dress, the same color as the one I'd worn the first time I had dinner with Antonio in his house. It seemed like a lifetime ago. When they called my name, I walked onto the stage with my head high. The lights were bright, making the audience look like shadows. But I could feel Antonio's eyes on me, steady and proud. I sat at the grand piano, placed my fingers on the keys, and began to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. The music flowed from me like water, filling the huge hall with sound. As I played, I thought about my journey, from a homeless girl playing an abandoned piano in an empty train station to this moment, performing on one of the most prestigious stages in the world. I thought about the price I had paid for this dream, the compromises I had made, the truths I had accepted about the man I loved. When the final notes faded away, the audience erupted in applause. I stood and bowed, my eyes finding Antonio in the front row. He was clapping harder than anyone, his face full of an emotion I rarely saw there. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. Backstage after the performance, he was waiting for me, a single white rose in his hand. Your mother would have been so proud, I said, taking the flower. Sophia would have been proud of both of us, he replied, his voice soft. It was one of the few times he had spoken his mother's name since her death. Usually, he just said, my mother, as if saying her name was still too painful. We walked together through the backstage area, past other musicians and their families. Some of them looked at Antonio with curious eyes. They knew who he was, or at least, who he had been. The Vannucci name still carried weight, still opened doors or closed them, depending on who was listening. Outside, his car was waiting. The driver, a new one who didn't carry a gun like the old one had, opened the door for us. As we settled into the back seat, Antonio took my hand. I have something to ask you, he said, his voice suddenly serious. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring with a diamond that caught the light from the street lamps as we drove. Marry me, Ellie. I looked at the ring, then at his face. This was not the Antonio that others saw, the powerful businessman with a shadowy past. This was my Antonio, the man who listened to music with his eyes closed, who had held his mother's hand as she died, who was trying every day to be better than his father had been. Yes, I said, I'll marry you. His smile was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He slipped the ring onto my finger, then kissed me softly. I don't deserve you, he whispered against my lips. Probably not, I agreed, making him laugh. But you're stuck with me anyway. Later that night, we sat on the terrace of what was now our home. I had moved from the guest house to the main house 6 months ago. The night was warm, the stars bright overhead. In the distance, the city lights twinkled like fallen stars. What are you thinking? Antonio asked, watching my face. I looked at the man who had changed my life, who I had changed in return. I was thinking about balance, I said. how we keep each other in check. Your darkness to my light. My hope to your cynicism. Your strength when I'm afraid. Antonio nodded thoughtfully. Balance, he repeated. That's a good word for it. I ran my finger over the ring on my hand, still not used to its weight. Do you ever regret it? Changing things? Walking away from some of your power? He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Sometimes, he admitted finally, when things are hard, when our legitimate businesses struggle, when I remember how easy it used to be to just take what I wanted. But then I remember my mother's face when she asked me to find another way. And I remember your face the night you saw me with a gun in my hand. And I know this path, hard as it is better. It's not perfect, I said. There are still shadows. There will always be shadows, Ellie. I am who I am. But there's light too. More than there used to be. We sat in comfortable silence, looking at the city spread out below us. My old life felt like a dream now. The hungry days, the scared nights, the loneliness. But I never forgot where I came from. It was why I taught piano to poor kids 2 days a week. Why I volunteered at the women's shelter where I had sometimes slept. I needed those reminders of who I had been, just as Antonio needed me to remind him of who he was trying to become. My nights still sometimes ended with nightmares of homelessness and hunger that sent me to the piano at 3 a.m. His still sometimes ended with phone calls that took him out into the dark, calls he never fully explained. We were not perfect people, and ours was not a perfect love, but it was real and strong and had survived things that would have broken other couples. I have something for you, Antonio said, breaking the silence. He handed me a large envelope. Inside was a deed to the old train station where we had first met. My mouth fell open. You bought it? He nodded. It was going to be torn down. I couldn't let that happen. Not to the place where I first heard you play. Tears filled my eyes. What will you do with it? Not me. Us. He took my hand. I thought maybe a music school. For kids like you were. Talented, but with no money for lessons. The piano is still there. It needs work, but it's playable. The thought of that old piano still waiting in the corner of the empty station where my life had changed forever made my heart full. That's perfect, I said. The next day we visited the train station together. It was dusty and quiet, just as it had been the night Antonio found me there. The piano sat in the same corner, its keys yellowed with age but still beautiful to me. I sat down and began to play Chopin's Nocturne in C minor, the same piece Antonio had heard that first night. As the music echoed off the high ceilings, I could almost see us as we were then, me, thin and afraid, playing for no one. Him, stepping out of the shadows, about to change my life forever. When I finished, Antonio was watching me with a soft look in his eyes. What are you thinking? I asked him, echoing his question from the night before. That some of the most beautiful music comes from unlikely combinations, he said, taking my hand and pulling me to my feet. I smiled up at him. Like a homeless pianist and a mafia boss trying to go straight? Exactly like that, he said, wrapping his arms around me as the last notes of the piano faded into silence. In the empty train station where our story began, we stood together. Neither of us perfect, both of us changed, both of us better for having found each other. The past was behind us, not forgotten, but forgiven. And the future, with all its challenges and promises, stretched out before us like a song waiting to be played,